Welcome to The Explainer. Look, if you're tuning into this, there's a good chance you or maybe someone you know has just faced that sudden stomach-dropping moment. You know the one, getting a phone call that a loved one has just been arrested. It is, quite literally, sheer panic, especially if this happens in Auburn, California, or really anywhere in Placer County. That rush of adrenaline can make it feel totally impossible to think straight. But today, we're going to take a deep breath and look closely at a detailed step-by-step survival guide. This is based on expert advice from Bail House Bail Bonds, folks who have been navigating this specific Placer County system for decades. We are going to transform all that chaos into a calm, structured plan of action.
Because this reality is perfectly captured by a really simple truth. It's the most critical and often the most disorienting period your family will experience. And honestly, that is not an exaggeration. The decisions you make in this specific 60-minute window, they directly dictate just how fast someone gets to come home from the Placer County Jail. Acting right now and doing it in the right way is absolutely key to minimizing their time behind bars.
Okay, let's dive into this. We actually call this the golden hour, and we're going to break this down chronologically, minute by minute. Minute 1 is to breathe. Minute 5 is for the call. Minute 15, we're going to understand booking. Minute 30 is to gather info. And finally, minute 60 is to notify your inner circle. By breaking what feels like an overwhelmingly chaotic hour into these bite-sized, manageable phases, you're taking back control of the situation.
So we start right at the very beginning. Minute 1. Take a breath.
Now, I know it sounds incredibly simple, almost too simple when you're in the middle of a literal crisis. But listen, you do not need a plan yet. You just need to be calm enough to make the next call. Having absolutely zero information right now is completely okay. Based on decades of experience working with families in Placer County, the ones who manage to take that single breath and stay just calm enough to think clearly, they are consistently the ones who navigate this whole process the fastest. So being calm is the absolute prerequisite for the critical action that's coming up next.
Moving right along to minutes 2 through 5, this is the period for the vital call.
So the crucial point here is this. The biggest regret families report having is actually waiting to gather all the perfect details before they pick up the phone. That call to an Auburn bail bondsman, like Bail House, needs to happen immediately. Now, the bondsman will typically ask for 4 key pieces of information. They'll want the person's full legal name, the approximate time and location of the arrest, any known charges, and whether or not they've been transported to the Placer County Jail yet. But remember, you don't need all these answers perfectly. Even with minimal information, the bondsman can start locating your loved one in the Placer County system right away. Next up, we enter minutes 5 through 15, the booking process. Now, what's really interesting about this next phase is this time frame, 2 to 6 hours. This number represents the time the booking process typically takes at the Placer County Jail. During this window, your loved one is being photographed, they're being fingerprinted, and formally processed. It's so vital to understand what they're actually experiencing, mainly because they have very limited ability to make phone calls during this time. So if an hour or two goes by and your phone isn't ringing, seriously, don't panic. That 2 to 6 hour window is standard facility procedure.
All right, let's look at minutes 15 to 30. We call this phase productive waiting.
While the bondsman is actively locating the individual in the system, you can actually use this gap in time super effectively. If you have a few extra minutes, you can start gathering some really helpful information. Things like employer contact information, proof of Auburn or Placer County residency, employment records, family connections, or even the names of any witnesses. In the legal world, these are known as community ties. Now, to be clear, these aren't strictly required just to start the bail bond process. Your bondsman is going to do their job regardless. But having this documentation ready can tremendously speed things up later if the charge happens to require a bail hearing at the Placer County Superior Court.
Which brings us to minutes 30 through 45, understanding costs.
By now, that initial shock is kind of wearing off, and the financial reality starts to set in. 10%. Knowing this number ahead of time is meant to bring you a massive sense of clarity. Knowing the legal fee structure early absolutely alleviates a ton of stress during a really chaotic hour. You see, California law legally sets the bail bond premium at exactly 10% of the total bail amount for all bail bonds in Auburn and throughout the rest of Placer County. Even before you know what the total bail amount actually is, just knowing this exact percentage rule helps you mentally prepare for that financial conversation.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the type of charge actually affects your timeline. For a misdemeanor, bail is set automatically from the Placer County schedule shortly after the booking process finishes, so it moves fast. But for felony charges, well, bail might require a judge to set it during an arraignment, and that naturally adds more time. Either way, understanding this difference prevents you from feeling entirely in the dark while you wait.
We are now rounding out the end of the hour, minutes 45 to 60, notifying the inner circle.
With a professional plan already in motion, it's time to communicate. And here is the golden rule for these phone calls. Focus on solutions and action, not panic and blame. You really want to be very thoughtful about who you tell and just how much detail you share. Right now, keep that circle of support small. By focusing your conversations purely on what is actively being done to help the situation, rather than, dwelling on the messy circumstances of the arrest itself, you keep everyone grounded and moving forward effectively.
So, the 60 minutes are up. You've breathed, you've called the bondsman, you've gathered your info, and you've notified your inner circle. But what happens after that first hour?
Let's move along and see how this builds into the final resolution phase. Between hours 2 and 6, the jail finishes booking and bail is set. Then, the next step is actually highly convenient. The bondsman can walk your family through all the paperwork completely over the phone. Literally, there is no office visit or trip to the Placer County Jail required. Finally, once the bond is posted, the release process begins, which usually takes anywhere from 20 minutes to 4 hours, just depending on how busy the jail is at that moment.
I'll leave you with this final, absolutely essential takeaway. The bail bonds process itself doesn't change based on when you call, but your loved one's time behind bars absolutely does. The paperwork, the fees, the booking process, all of that is basically set in stone. But a bondsman's ability to be ready to move the exact instant that bail is set, well, that depends entirely on how early you bring them into the fold. Acting early in that critical first hour is the only real way to minimize the time your loved one spends in a cell. So what will you do with your first 60 minutes? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.